Good Monday morning. The San Antonio Spurs are going to acquire Sacramento Kings guard De'Aaron Fox. According to all the reports that came out on Sunday evening, that was a wild night for the Spurs. Just a day before the Los Angeles Lakers had added Luka Doncic. So yeah, blockbuster trades have been happening now with a few more days still leading up to the trade deadline. So that's all I'm going to basically talk about in this episode is look straight at the Fox trade to the Spurs. So let's begin talking about the players that were moved in this trade. So the Spurs acquired Fox and Jordan McLaughlin from the Kings. McLaughlin, I will note, is on a minimum salary, and then he's going to be a free agent next offseason. The Kings acquired Zach LaVine from the Chicago Bulls and Sidi Sissoko from the Spurs. And then the Bulls acquired Kevin Huerter from the Kings and then Zach Collins and Trey Jones from the Spurs. So those are the players involved in the trade. As far as the picks, the Spurs are sending 3 first-round picks and 2 seconds to the Kings, plus 1 first to the Bulls. So on paper, yes, it looks like the Spurs, moved 4 picks total to both teams and 2 second-round picks. But there, you got to really look at the context in terms of, are those picks going to convey? And most likely, for as I'm going to talk about here, they're probably not in terms of first-round pick territory. So the Bulls did get back their own 2025 first-round pick from the Spurs, and that pick was protected by Chicago. So there was a chance that if the Bulls just tanked the season, the Spurs weren't going to get that pick anyway. So basically, Chicago just gets that full protection with that pick. The Bulls also got back a prior second-round pick that they had sent to the Kings in a prior trade. For what year was it? From 2028. So basically, the Bulls get their own pick back from Sacramento, a second-round pick. And here's why I'm going to say that even though, yes, on paper, it looks like the Spurs gave the Kings 3 first-round picks, they really didn't. They really gave them 2 first-round picks and 5 second-round picks. And here's how that happens. So the Kings did get the Spurs' 2025 Charlotte pick first. They also got the 2027 Spurs pick, and they also got the 2031 Minnesota Timberwolves first-round pick. However, when we go back to that Charlotte pick, that's important because that pick is protected 1 through 14 this season, and we obviously know Charlotte's one of the tanking teams. They're actually going to probably be a top 5 lottery team. So the Kings are not going to get that first round pick in 2025 from the Hornets. What's going to happen with that pick is it's going to turn into 2 second round picks in the year 2026 and in the year 2027. So really, the Kings are getting from the Spurs in terms of first round picks, they're getting just the Spurs' 2027 first round pick, but by that time, honestly, that's going to be in the late 20s because the Spurs should be a good playoff team by then. So it's not really going to be, like the Spurs are missing out too much on that pick. And they're going to get the 2031 Wolves pick. Now that one could be interesting because, who knows what's going to happen with the Wolves 7 years from now? What if they're tanking and they're doing a rebuilding situation? That could be a valuable pick, but you never know. And honestly, that's probably the most valuable asset that the Kings are getting out of this deal from the Spurs' side is that 2031 pick. And then, like I said, so basically when we talk about the volume of picks, it's really just 2 firsts for the Kings and 5 seconds that they're getting for Fox. And then of course the Spurs basically just sent Chicago back their own pick, and that pick too was like I said, it was protected by the Bulls had they tanked this season. So again, as far as the pick haul, it wasn't too bad. The Spurs still have a lot of future assets available in picks. They're going to have 6 of their own 7 picks, according to Bobby Marks. 6 of their own 7 first-round picks in the next 7 years, according to Bobby Marks. They still get the Atlanta Hawks' 2025 for unprotected first-round pick this season, plus the 2027 pick from the Hawks. So yes, even though San Antonio lost one of their own picks, they're going to still get the Hawks' pick in 2027. And who knows what's going on with the Hawks in a few years? I mean, maybe they're struggling and tanking, and then the Spurs get a really good pick at that time. The Spurs also still have multiple swaps coming up in upcoming drafts. They have a swap with the Hawks. They have a swap with the Celtics, the Mavericks, I was about to say the Minnesota Vikings, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Sacramento Kings. So yeah, they still have a plenty of future assets to make more trades, whether that's this deadline or in future summers. Because there's, even though they're adding Fox, it's going to be great, but they're still this roster still needs some work down the road to really get themselves into like that title contention kind of territory. So that's good to see that they have a plethora of picks to make upcoming moves. Now, for the Spurs, like I mentioned, I mean, this was a big win for them, adding De'Aaron Fox without having to give up these players. I mean, just going into looking at these trade negotiations, I know the word got out that the Kings wanted Stephon Castle out of the Spurs players. The Spurs did not have to give up Castle. They didn't even have to give up Devin Vassell. They didn't have to give up Keldon Johnson or Jeremy Sohan. So they kept a lot of their young core players, the Spurs, on the roster. Again, all they had to do was give up Zach Collins, Trey Jones, and Sidi Sissoko in terms of players that got moved. And honestly, the fact that they they were able to move Collins' contract to the Bulls and really only had to give away one first round pick, because I thought that would have been, a big issue for them, was trying to move Collins' contract because he's going to end up earning $18 million next season. He obviously hasn't been meeting the expectations of his contract. So again, this was a very good trade for the Spurs. Basically, when you think about it, they got De'Aaron Fox for 2 firsts and 5 seconds. I mean, and they would take that, pretty much any day of the week. So as far as winning the trade, I think the Spurs did get a great haul for Fox, and you could just tell based on the Kings' comments and also some of their media that were covering them, they got blown out on Sunday or Saturday in OKC, and just the mood was really bad with the team. They kind of just knew something was about to happen. Even the players were saying that the trade, all these rumors were becoming distracting for them. So basically, you could tell that maybe the Kings wanted to wait this out, but basically they still had to go through an entire season if they were going to try to hold on to Fox till the summer, and it just wasn't going right. And so they obviously pivoted to just creating this deal now, going to a place where Fox wanted to go. I am interested to see in the coming days, as we get more reporting about this situation, if Fox's agency or Fox's agent started to put more pressure on other teams of not trading for him or sending their best packages, basically saying, he's only going to re-sign with San Antonio. So basically, if that message got stronger in these last few days, maybe that's a good reason why the Kings had to settle for this package and basically only deal with dealing with the Spurs here. I'm not going to say only deal with the Spurs, but settling on this Spurs package where they didn't even get Keldon Johnson, they didn't get Vassell, and even the first round picks, the Spurs still kept a lot of their very valuable first round picks. So I do wonder in the coming days if we'll get more word about whether or not that report that those kind of signals got stronger in the back channels of telling teams, don't trade for him. He's not going to re-sign with you in 2026 when he becomes an unrestricted free agent, because that was some of the initial reporting this past week when Fox, when the Kings started looking to move Fox via trade. Now, I am recording this on a Sunday evening, so I know that you're probably listening to this on a Monday morning. I'm going to release this. It's 10:34 Mountain Time, PM. And the deal hasn't gone official yet, and there's a reason. There's a reason for that. It could take a few days, or maybe Monday gets done. But here's why: it's because in order for this trade to happen, the Bulls need to make some more player movement. What's going on here is that the Bulls. If they were to complete this trade right now, that would be 17 players on guaranteed contracts. That would not work. It's not legal to have that many players. You can only have up to 15 players. So the Bulls need to figure out in these next coming days before Thursday, February 6th. They need to figure out either are they going to waive 2 players on their current roster, or are they trying to look for deals to move these 2 more players and then not bring back other players. So that way they can basically open 2 roster spots to bring in enough space for Zach Collins, for Trey Jones, and for Kevin Huerter. So again, until the Bulls create that roster space, this deal cannot be completed yet for the Spurs, Kings, and Bulls. And obviously their deadline is coming up here on Thursday, February 6th, for them to figure the situation out and get it done. However, once it does get completed, the deal, the Spurs are going to open up 1 open roster spot. So again, that's going to be interesting still with a few days left in the trade deadline to either acquire a player or sign a free agent. And so one interesting player, just looking at their rosters, I'm going to talk about a little bit. They're still pretty light in the big man area, the depth at the backup 5 basically role. They still have Charles Bassey there. I know they've been giving Jeremy Sohan some minutes there, but now with Zach gone, they could look at a player who just got waived by the Jazz in Mo Bamba, who was recently playing with the Clippers. So if Bamba were to clear waivers in the next 48 hours, I'm just going to be interested to see if the Spurs have any interest in him or any other big, basically, if that's kind of one of the positions they want to target here with these last 4 days before the trade deadline ends. Something too to note about what moves, financial tools the Spurs have to sign a player or trade for a player. They still do have $3.4 million left of their room mid-level exception from this past summer. So again, that can be used to either sign a free agent or trade a player below that salary range, $3.4 million, to come into that room exception. So they can still use that. So again, that's what I'm kind of interested in watching these next few days. Are they going to target a big? Are they going to target what kind of other player are they going to target with that available space there, or with that $3.4 million if they want to use it? As far as this season for making trades, they can still do some trades if they need to before Thursday. They're still $11.8 million under the tax, so they're definitely still an under the tax team right now, even with the inclusion of Fox and McLaughlin. Plus, they're very far away from the first apron. So again, there's not really a lot of restrictions on them. As long as they kind of match up salaries, they can figure out more trades. Again, the fact that they held on to Keldon Johnson looks like they don't want to move him. Just basically the fact that he wasn't included in this trade. But again, his contract is still one of the more movable contracts that teams. There was some reporting this past week that teams were looking at Keldon in terms of being. In terms of having to get moved in a multi-team trade for Fox. So again, maybe that's out there. And Keldon has been playing really good basketball in these last two games that the Spurs have played in. But again, Keldon's contract, as far as trade wise, Keldon probably has the most. The biggest contract that can kind of bring in some players, but again, right now, based on the Spurs not putting him in this deal, I do think that they want to hold on to him. Also, it'll be interesting to see if, as I'm going to talk about here in the offseason, what their kind of financial picture looks like. I am interested to see if they want to maybe still look at possibly moving one of the young players who's not getting in minutes, in either Malachi Branham or Blake Wesley, who I've talked about before and written about before, where maybe a lottery team trades for Malachi or Wesley for maybe like a protected second round pick or a second round pick swap, just to give those players more minutes. And also this clears not only some salary room for the off season, but also it clears a roster spot up for next season as well. So I'm interested to see if maybe they make one more smaller move in terms of moving either Branham or Wesley, who both players aren't getting any minutes this season so far. Just looking at the roster right now, again, I'm not sure if they're going to still do some other deals. There's still like three or 4 days left to create that. But just looking at some early lineup ideas I have right now, just kind of looking at this roster, what it looks like right now, I could see different starting lineups. Maybe a group of like De'Aaron Fox, Chris Paul, Vassell, Harrison Barnes, and Wemby. So right there you have Fox right there with Paul playing alongside. I could see a group where now Chris Paul goes to the bench. And the Spurs start with like De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell, Harrison Barnes, and Wemby. Or I could even see the Spurs going back to like what they kind of started the season with when they finally got fully healthy, and that could be something like De'Aaron Fox, Devin Vassell, Harrison Barnes, Jeremy Sohan, and Wemby. So again, maybe having Paul and Castle be those guards off the bench. I'm not too sure. As far as Paul, the Paul situation, obviously, this is going to be interesting to watch in these next, coming 48 hours or 24 hours, whatever time period, because, how does he feel about the Spurs? I know that, he knew he was only here for a year. And obviously if there was a chance to go get Fox and not have to give up a lot of assets for him, the Spurs had to do it. I mean, that's just in the best interest of their franchise. But, how does he feel about it? Does he still want to start? Is he okay with coming off the bench? I do think that there's still a good chance that he'll remain on the roster past Thursday, just because it was announced on Chris Haynes announced, an independent reporter who used to work for TNT and used to work for Bleacher Report. Chris Haynes announced that Chris Paul and Wemby will be participating in the Skills Challenge on February 15th, Saturday, All-Star Saturday night. So again, that coming out before the Fox trade does show that maybe, Paul kind of maybe there was some hint that Paul knew he was going to still be on the roster past Thursday. But again, we'll see. There's still, 3 or 4 more days left to see what happens with the Paul situation. So I am eager to see what's going on with Chris Paul. But he also knows how to play off the bench. He did that with the Warriors last year. That was his main role. So again, we'll see what kind of lineups the Spurs figure out here, and if they're not done changing up their team for at least this season with that Thursday deadline coming up as well. Looking at an early picture of the offseason. So right now, with cap holds, and there's multiple free agents on the roster coming up here in the summer, that there's going to be Chris Paul's a free agent, Sandro Mamukelashvili, Charles Bassey, all the two-way players, plus Jordan McLaughlin now. With all those players cap holds still on the books, the Spurs are going to be an over-the-cap team. However, if they renounce all those free agents, okay, so like let's say Chris Paul leaves and signs elsewhere, and Mamu, Bassey, they also leave elsewhere as well, and the two-way players, then the Spurs are still going to be $402,000 over the cap. And here's why they don't have any more cap space. The reason why is because they didn't have to give up a lot of their players with larger salaries, like Devin Vassell, like Keldon Johnson. Plus, they kept their own first-round pick in this deal, and they kept the Atlanta Hawks' 2025 first round pick. So basically, those two picks right now, let's just say the lottery happened today, the Spurs would get the 11th pick, the Hawks would get they would get the 10th pick from the Hawks as well. So that's like $20 million in salary you're adding to their books already. And the rookie salary contracts do get added on even before we even know who the player is on the team cap sheet. So right now, the Spurs would be $402,000 over the salary cap going into free agency on day one, July 1st. So basically, with how they're going to be operating right now, unless they make some big trades, like I said, to move some players with substantial salary, someone like a Keldon Johnson, if they do something, if they were to move someone like that, then yes, they could open up some cap space. But if they don't, then going into the offseason, they're going to be operating as an over the cap team where they're going to have two tools to either trade for free agents, sign free agents, or trade for players on other teams. They would have the $14.1 million non-tax mid-level exception, and they would also have the $5.1 million biannual exception next year. So again, that's in the summer, should I say. So basically, if they don't operate as a salary cap team or a cap space team, should we say, they're going to have those two tools to make some changes to the roster in the offseason, either the $14 million non-tax MLE or the $5 million biannual exception. So yeah, that's just kind of a picture of what their cap sheet looks like. Now, as far as the future with Fox and signing him to an extension, the Spurs have three options here, and I definitely got to give credit to Bobby Marks of ESPN. He's been great about providing the details on these contract options for Fox. So here's option one. Let's say that the deal gets done today on Monday, February 3rd. That means that Fox cannot sign a 4-year extension with the Spurs until August 3rd. Later this month. So basically, it has to be 6 months from the day that you were traded. So August 3rd is the earliest the Spurs can sign Fox to a 4-year, $229 million extension. So again, it has to be 6 months after the deal. So that's option one for Fox, is that he can sign, if he just wants to get a deal done, sign long-term with the Spurs for at least the next 4 years. That's allowed. He would do it on the day that the 6 months from the day he got traded. So for now, in this scenario, we're going with August 3rd. Option two for Fox is a little bit more risky, but it's also going to be he's going to earn a lot more money. It would be for him to finish playing this season under contract with the Spurs, play all of next season with the Spurs under contract at $37 million, and then in the summer of 2026, he becomes a free agent. But since the Spurs now have his bird rights, they can sign him to a 5-year deal for $296 million, almost $300 million. So again, that's a bit risky because then Fox has to be careful about not making sure he builds chemistry, he plays well, but then also making sure he doesn't get hurt within a year and a half. So again, it's a little bit more risky. So I think probably option one looks a little bit safer for him. Then there's option three that Bobby Marks mentioned. Now this one would take some maneuvering by the Spurs' front office to get some cap space, and here's what I mean. Let's say that this summer the Spurs move some players or player and open up at least $9 million in cap space. If they're able to do that, then we're using that fake date here of August 3rd, whatever 6 months is from the trade deadline or from the day that he was traded. So let's say August 3rd rolls around. What the Spurs can do now is what we call renegotiate and extend Fox's contract, plus sign his he can still sign his 4-year deal. So here's how that would work. Next season, Fox is going to make $37 million. If the Spurs can open up around $9 million in cap space this summer, then they can now boost his salary in that renegotiation from $37 million up to $46 million, which is his max as a veteran with 7 to 9 years of experience. That's the most money he can make. It's 30% of the salary cap. So again, he can go from $37 million to $46 million. So that's if the Spurs can create some cap space for him, at least $9 million. Then on top of that, he can still sign his 4-year, $229 million extension. So basically, this is the Spurs basically giving him a pay raise next season, and then he's still going to get that long-term commitment with them for 4 more years. At that 4-year, $229 million that starts in the 26-27 season. So again, those are just some of the options. Regarding the Fox situation, again, visit thespotupshot.com. I put more details in my initial write-up of this situation. I just want to, now that the Spurs are going to be acquiring him, of course, I'm going to be writing a lot more about Fox being added to the team. I also want to look, though, I know one of the questions is coming up is Fox is going to have some huge salary numbers in the $50, almost $60 million range, toward the end of an extension if he signs one with the Spurs toward the end of that contract. And so I am going to look at, what does the Spurs' cap sheet look like, years from now, like 4 years from now? and how what would they look like not only with Fox on a max, but then also having Wemby on a max, because like Victor is going to be coming up for a super max here pretty soon, because he's probably going to make All NBA this season, and then if he does it again next season, or wins Defensive Player of the Year, he basically has to like do two of those awards in like 2 out of 3 years, then he becomes eligible for a super max. So again, Wemby's salary is going to quickly jump up as well, and so I do want to see down the road here in about 3 or 4 years, what does the Spurs' cap sheet look like, and how does that impact their flexibility for adding to the team? Because like I said, as much as they're able to keep a lot of their young players, there's some of those players still have some flaws. Like a lot of these guys have a difficult time shooting the ball, and so that's something they have to really look into, whether that's through trades or trying to get these players to develop and waiting it out to see if they can develop on better jump shots, or from the 3-point range, stuff like that. So again, we'll kind of see what's going on. I just wanted to put out a quick podcast this Monday morning on my initial thoughts on De'Aaron Fox being traded to the San Antonio Spurs. So again, we'll see what's going on, and of course, this is basically my I'll just tell you all the story right now. So Sunday afternoon, I started prepping my notes for this episode, because I didn't know the Fox situation was going to happen. Now, basically, I put an entire outline. I talked about the Spurs this past week. I talked about what was going on prior in the Fox negotiations between the Spurs and the Kings. I talked about I was going to look at the upcoming week for the Spurs, talking about Wemby making the All-Star team. I had the entire outline built for this episode, and then all of a sudden, I just refreshed Twitter Sunday evening, and I see that one of my former colleagues at Project Spurs, who used to work with me, Colin Reed, he was retweeting some of these Kings radio guys, radio personalities, and they were kind of just saying, they were giving some cryptic stuff out there. They were saying like, turn on your alerts, get ready, it's about to happen. And then all of a sudden, we were just waiting maybe like 15 minutes, and then boom, Shams drops the breaking news that Fox had been traded to the Spurs. So again, I basically, after that point, I scrapped the entire outline, and I obviously I wrote it up. If you want to visit the spotupshot.com, and then of course now I'm just giving my initial takeaways from the trade. So again, that's all we're going to basically focus on. We're not going to look too much about the team numbers prior, because now this is a brand new team adding a basically like a top 20, top 25 player here in De'Aaron Fox now, alongside Wemby, who's almost like a top 5, top 10 player at this point as well. So again, it's going to be a very interesting rest of the season for the Spurs. I will know that they were only about 2 games out of the play-in picture. So now adding Fox, they can really try to see if they can make a run here in these last 36, 38 games left. So, they basically have to be like 6 games over 500 the rest of the way is kind of what I looked into my projections when I was kind of looking at this. And obviously now having Fox, they're no longer going to be underdogs in almost like every game that they've been playing a lot this season. They're going to be one of the favorites on certain nights now. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of chemistry they build, and what if they make any more moves here with a few more days left in the NBA trade deadline on Thursday, February 6th. So let's just see what's going to happen.